Hashibudisne. Peace and love and happiness to you all. Tell me out there, how many of you have always dreamed of being king? Today we're going to tell a story about the weirdest king you've never heard of. But first I want to tell you a story about this guy over here. So this guy over here, when he was a little kid, he wasn't like other kids looking at lava lamps going, groovy baby. He was watching the History Network with his parents. And he would always watch shows where a general would do a coup d'etat, remove the president, bring an end to the democracy, and then make himself dictator, and it was a dictatorship. And he looked at his parents and said, "Ma, Pa, why do they always make themselves dictator? Why don't they ever make themselves king and make it a monarchy?" He couldn't remember the response his parents gave him, but years later, he would get his answer. And that brings us to this guy over here. His name is Jean Bidel Bicastro. Jean Bidel Bicastro was obsessed with Napoleon Bonaparte. So obsessed, he wanted to be just like him. And he joined his nation's military, what was in Central Africa, which basically meant he was part of the French military. And he served in both World War II and, yes, the French-Vietnam War. And one day, he promoted himself all the way up to General Bidel Bicastro. And he did the same thing his hero Napoleon Bonaparte did, and he did a military-style, a coup d'etat. And he removed the president of the nation, and his name was President Daka, if I'm pronouncing his name right. And first he makes himself president for life. But then he's like, why be president for life when I can just simply become a dictator? Then he becomes dictator of the nation. Then he goes even crazier than that, and he writes the nation's constitution a third time, and he goes, you know what, I've always wanted to be king, here's my chance. So he makes his nation an absolute monarchy. He goes so far, he actually renames his nation from Central Africa Republic to the Empire of Central Africa Republic. Now, most of you groovy cats out there don't really even know where Central Africa Republic is. You probably saw it on the map once or twice, but didn't really think of it. Well, he actually renamed his nation the Empire of Central Africa Republic. And he has a scepter, a crown, and he sends out over 5,000 invites, man. He even invited the Emperor of Japan and the Shah of Iran and all these other famous people and powerful blokes to his nation. But get this, all the monarchs he invited said the same thing. We don't recognize you as a true monarch, because a lot of them had some sort of, they came from powerful families that had a strong mythology around it, like descending from gods or being chosen by gods, or their family served nobly for hundreds of years before they became monarchs. He basically came out of nowhere and said, I am king of Central African Republic. And of those 5,000 invites, only 600 people showed up. He simply replied, they are simply jealous that I have an empire and they do not. Like, he actually said that. And for his ceremony, 8 of his 20 daughters, and he had a bunch of wives as well, but yes, he had 20 daughters. He had 8 of his daughters dressed up all fancy. And he had these expensive cars shipped in from Europe to do this ceremony. He had a scepter, and the reason why this is so bad is that isn't part of his nation's culture. Even African nations that do have monarchies don't do it like that. That's a European 1700 things. Most European monarchs don't even dress like that or act like that, but he wanted to be just like Napoleon. Now, now just imagine how hot and humid it is in Central Africa Republic, and you're dressed up like this. Now, this is where things get crazy. Get this. He spent up to a quarter or more of his nation's wealth on his ceremony. His throne looked like something from a movie. Like, it didn't look like an actual king's throne. It looked like something from a cartoon villain. So his throne was like designed by French sculptor Olive Bala, whatever, I can't pronounce his name, but apparently he was famous in the 70s. And he has horses shipped in from Belgium and France, and most people said it looked like something from a Disney movie, not something from history. And the president of France, who was his friend, didn't even show up, so talk about throwing a huge party and no one wants to come. And the whole world talked about him, but not in the way you would think. The world just laughed at him. Like, ha 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 ha, this guy thinks he's a king. And he spends so much money. One of his advisors starts talking about doing a coup d'etat because his people are starving, they're poor, and he's making his nation even poorer. He finds out about it, and unfortunately, he breaks his legs. Then one day at a ceremony, they have this huge banquet, and he tells a joke. No one knows if he was serious or not, but he goes up to someone and goes, "You know, it's going to be funny when they find out they're actually eating human flesh and other people." He did actually say that. The thing is, some people saying he was just joking. Other people are saying, I don't know, this guy is kind of crazy. So, life goes on. Then one day, while he's out of the country, the French becomes aware of what he's doing, and they're kind of embarrassed with their relationship with him. So they send helicopters in, and the capital city just falls. Like, even his own men say, yeah, this guy's crazy because he's going up to everyone saying, bow before your monarch. And he's in Libya while all of this is happening. And they put President Daca back in power. And later on, President Jean Fidel Castro gets arrested years later. He gets charged for all of these crimes against humanity. And he gets charged for cannibalism, but that's later on dropped because he said it was just a joke. And his throne is taken apart. And it's back to democracy. But then right after that, another military coup d'etat happens. It becomes a dictatorship. And then it becomes a democracy. And that's like the story of the craziest dictator you've never heard of. Now, what is the moral of the story? The moral of the story for me is we always need to look towards the future, not the past. Jean Fidel Castro looked at the great leaders of the past, the empires of the past, and he brought that into Central Africa, thinking that could make Central Africa a real empire. But it wasn't. He was delusional. You just can't slap the name empire on your nation. That's not what an empire is. And that guy we were talking about earlier, he learned something. When you become dictator of a nation, people think you're evil. But when you make yourself king of a nation, the whole world will think you've gone crazy. That's something you do in the 1800s, the Middle Ages, the Roman Empire. But tell me, what did you guys think of the story? As for this guy over here, he got the answer to his question. Taking over a nation and becoming king is what you did in the Middle Ages. Nowadays, if you become a dictator, everyone thinks you're evil. But if you go for the crown and declare yourself king or emperor, everyone thinks you're crazy. And no one will take you seriously.